What if we solved climate change tomorrow? What if we woke up one morning to find that all the problems associated with climate change had vanished? Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? It would be wonderful to wake up to a world without storms, floods, droughts, or heat waves. But while the idea of a future with stable and healthy weather patterns is enticing, what would actually happen if climate change disappeared overnight? Let's take a moment to acknowledge the significant challenges associated with addressing climate change. Decarbonizing our economies, transforming energy systems, and altering consumption patterns are no easy feats. They require concerted global efforts, innovative technologies, and a fundamental shift in how we live and work. However, for the sake of a thought experiment, let's imagine that a technological breakthrough or a series of fortunate events abruptly ends our climate concerns. What would a world without climate change look like? How would this transformation impact our daily lives, economies, and the environment? Let's delve into this intriguing scenario. Economic ramifications. The immediate aftermath of a sudden end to climate change would likely send shockwaves through the global economy. Industries that have been established to tackle climate change, such as renewable energy manufacturing, carbon capture technology, and sustainable agriculture, would face a sharp decline. Entire business sectors geared towards mitigating climate risks might collapse, leading to job losses and economic hardship. On the other hand, industries that were previously hindered by climate regulations or were in competition with green alternatives would experience a resurgence. Fossil fuel companies, for example, would no longer be under pressure to reduce emissions, potentially leading to a renewed focus on extraction and refining. Industries such as cement, steel, and meat production, which have significant carbon footprints, would also see a relaxation of environmental constraints. Furthermore, the agricultural sector could revert to more intensive practices since the threat of climate-induced crop failures would no longer be a concern. However, this shift could lead to a depletion of soil quality and biodiversity loss in the short term. In essence, the immediate impact of a salt climate crisis would resemble an economic earthquake. Certain sectors would thrive, while others would face a sudden decline, leaving many industries and their stakeholders scrambling to adapt to this abrupt change. Geopolitical repercussions. The geopolitical landscape would also undergo a dramatic shift in the event of a sudden climate resolution. Countries that have invested heavily in climate action and positioned themselves as leaders in the fight against climate change, such as Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, might find their international influence waning. Their strategic partnerships and alliances forged around shared climate goals would lose relevance, potentially causing diplomatic rifts or realignment of allegiances. Conversely, countries that were previously climate laggards but have significant fossil fuel reserves and production capacities, such as Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Canada, might find themselves in a position of renewed power. Their control over vital resources could once again make them influential players on the global stage, shaping international agreements and policies to their advantage. Moreover, the dynamics between developed and developing nations could shift. As climate change is no longer a pressing concern, the urgency for climate financing from developed to developing countries would diminish. This could lead to a renegotiation of existing agreements and a reallocation of funds based on new global priorities. In essence, the geopolitical ramifications of a salt climate crisis would mirror the economic repercussions, causing a power shift and necessitating a reconfiguration of alliances and agreements on the global stage. Social and lifestyle changes. The abrupt disappearance of climate change would likely lead to profound social and lifestyle changes. One immediate consequence would be a decline in public awareness and concern about environmental issues. With the constant threat of extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and ecosystem collapse no longer looming, individuals might prioritize other issues and concerns. This shift in focus could result in a lapse in environmentally friendly practices that have become commonplace. For instance, the use of public transportation, energy-efficient appliances, and sustainable consumer goods might decline as people revert to more carbon-intensive habits. Moreover, the sense of urgency that has driven innovation in clean energy and sustainable practices might dissipate, leading to complacency and a reduced emphasis on research and development in these fields. However, there is a silver lining to this scenario. With the climate crisis no longer overshadowing other global concerns, societies could redirect their attention and resources towards addressing issues such as poverty, inequality, and disease. This could lead to advancements in healthcare, education, and social welfare, improving the overall quality of life for many. In essence, the social and lifestyle changes associated with a sudden end to climate change would reflect a collective sigh of relief, but also a potential lapse in environmental consciousness and action. Environmental consequences. From an environmental perspective, the sudden disappearance of climate change could initially appear as a blessing. With the associated extreme weather events and rising sea levels no longer a concern, vulnerable ecosystems and species might find some respite. For example, coastal habitats and the species that depend on them could recover from the erosions and inundations caused by rising sea levels and more frequent storm surges. However, this reprieve might be short-lived as human activities, no longer constrained by climate regulations, could resume and intensify. Increased industrialization, urbanization, and resource extraction could once again pose significant threats to biodiversity, ecosystems, and the delicate balance of the natural world. Moreover, the absence of incentives or pressures to adopt sustainable practices could lead to a resurgence of environmentally harmful activities such as overfishing, deforestation, and the release of pollutants into the environment. In essence, the environmental consequences of assault climate change would paint a mixed picture. While certain ecosystems and species might benefit initially from the absence of climate-driven disturbances, the removal of environmental constraints could lead to renewed human-driven pressures, threatening the very fabric of the natural world. Long-term implications. The long-term implications of assault climate change are perhaps the most complex and far-reaching. Over time, the absence of climate-related challenges could lead to a gradual decline in global cooperation and collective action. International agreements aimed at mitigating climate change, such as the Paris Agreement, might lose their relevance and fall by the wayside as countries disengage from their emission reduction targets and refocus on other priorities. Moreover, the absence of a pressing climate crisis could foster a sense of complacency and short-sightedness among policymakers. With climate action no longer a top priority, governments might prioritize other issues, potentially overlooking the long-term environmental and societal impacts of their decisions. For instance, a renewed focus on economic growth and development could lead to policies that favor short-term gains over long-term sustainability, potentially reigniting environmental concerns in the future. In essence, the long-term implications of assault climate change would underscore the importance of foresight and preparedness. Even in the absence of an imminent climate crisis, maintaining a commitment to sustainability, investing in renewable energy, and preserving natural ecosystems would be crucial to safeguard the planet as health and humanity as future. A day in the sun, a world without climate change. In conclusion, the prospect of climate change disappearing overnight offers a tantalizing glimpse into a world free from the specter of extreme weather, rising sea levels, and ecological collapse. However, this utopian vision is quickly tempered by the realization of the profound economic, social, environmental, and geopolitical repercussions that would accompany such a shift. While the immediate aftermath might bring relief and renewed opportunities in certain sectors, the long-term implications paint a more complex and challenging picture. The urgency that has driven innovation and global cooperation might wane, leading to complacency, the potential resurgence of environmental concerns. Ultimately, the question remains, can humanity, faced with this sudden lack of climate urgency, maintain its commitment to sustainability and responsible stewardship of the planet, or will it succumb to the allure of short-term gains at the expense of long-term well-being? Only time will tell. Thank you for joining us on this thought-provoking journey. And remember, while climate change may pose formidable challenges, it also presents an opportunity for collective action, innovation, and a more sustainable future. Stay informed, stay engaged, and be part of the solution.